Hey, it's Bad Philosophy.
So it is.
Yeah.
Yay!
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah,
May the fourth be with you
and
always.
also with you.
Mm.
Oh, I should totally boot Audacity and start recording.
Oh, so yeah, the audio version won't start there. So if you're watching this on video, you're going to see us start the episode over again. Oh, I should
Um,
probably do the same.
are you not recording either?
I'm not recording my own audio. Terrible.
All right, I have
We
started
completely forgot
recording.
how to podcast.
I have started recording on Bad Philosophy. And if you're
Okay.
watching the live stream, you will see on my feed Binding of Isaac, which I'm also currently playing.
Okay, now I'm recording as well. All right.
Yay!
Yay.
Now time for a real
Anyways,
start to the podcast.
okay. Hey, it's Bad Philosophy.
So it is.
Hey, Kevin.
Yeah,
May the fourth be with you.
and also with you.
Yay! It's Star Wars Day,
It is.
and we're going to talk about that here on the show.
Apparently we are, because Star Wars Day, it's a thing. Have you heard about it?
Yeah. So, Kevin, I'm sure the viewers would love to see you and not a bunch of strange creatures getting
Give me a
flayed
sec.
and
Give me a sec.
exploded. Okay.
Fine. No, it's Binding of Isaac, man. It's a great little game. Although I have
Okay.
no idea how well it's actually screening.
Yeah, pretty well.
Pretty well. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
cool.
that's pretty good.
I want to play. I think I've said this before when I was playing Spelunky at the beginning of the last episode. That
Mm-hmm.
like I'd like to have a Twitch channel or something just in my spare time. Like I'm terrible at Spelunky, or I don't know how to play games and play all the games that I enjoy but I'm terrible at, like Hearthstone.
Mm-hmm.
But I just haven't put in the effort to do it because I'm lazy.
No, yeah, that's
So I
that's a
mean, like
perfectly
I
acceptable
already
reason.
put
Yeah.
a fair amount of time into playing video games. So like putting the extra amount of time into playing video games on the internet so people can watch me
Mm.
is trickier. Although I'm strongly considering picking up Payday 2 next time it goes on sale. That's sort of my next
Mm.
game purchase. I've been
All
looking
right.
for co-op action, and it's got co-op bank heist action, which is cool because you can.
Co-op. You can steal money from banks with your friends.
Yes, and usually it goes terribly awry.
Mm.
Hey, look, a kitty.
Well, cool. Yeah. So where should we begin? So you sent an article that was a long interview with J.J. Abrams.
Yeah, which I didn't actually read before I posted it. I read it
Oh.
afterwards, and it was much less interesting than I thought it was.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, and it's also from last year. So
yes,
it's all like super. Hey, Star Trek Into
super
Darkness. Hey, Star
secretive.
Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Into Darkness.
But I think that's an
Darkness.
interesting thing because this is the first time where you've had such a massive crossover, not crossover, yeah, crossover maybe, but
Mm-hmm.
like someone who is such a creative force in one reboot, jumping ship to what some consider to be like the evil ex of fandom's brother, like
Hmm.
one of those sorts of things, like jumping ship from Star Trek to Star Wars. And like in the interview I posted, he's very cagey. He's like, "Oh, I'll still be involved in Star Trek, probably. I don't know. It's hard to say."
Hmm.
Although he's not. Like he may be a producer at best.
Do you think is that because the Star Wars franchise has a lot more money to give him than the?
Probably. Like I mean, there's no denying the last two Star Trek movies were unqualified successes. Like they did really well at the box office, and that's really all that counts. All my little fan issues aside, of which I have many,
Mhm.
particularly within the darkness, it's still a fun actiony romp that made
Mhm.
lots of money. But Star Wars will make more, and there's
Mm.
three of them already out of the box. And that kind of points to something that has bugged me for a long time, being like since like fifth grade when this was an actual question that I cared about.
Mhm.
Being a Star Trek fan first, like I like Star Wars, but I'm definitely a Trekkie. I am not
Mhm.
a Warsy,
Yeah.
which
Is
is what
that the term? Is that the proper term?
they don't have a term, and that goes to a point I want to
Huh.
make. Like, there's not. like there's people have tried and like Jedi Masters or derogatorily like Star Whores, but there's never been sort of a self-adopted name like Trekkies or to a lesser extent Trekkers or Browncoats or whatever the Stargate fans call themselves.
Well, so the Trekkie thing, just real briefly, which one is more acceptable?
Trekkie was seen as very derogatory for a long time, sort of like, oh, what a bunch of Trekkies, like it was slang for just nerds in general. And so Trekker kind of was brought up by those who were proud of it, sort of an attempt to kind of take it back. I've always called myself a Trekkie, so I'm sticking with that. Hi, Felicity.
Kitty.
So I consider myself that's a light bulb. Don't lick it. I consider myself a Trekkie. There are definitely those who consider themselves Trekkers instead. To which I say, you know what? Call yourself whatever you want. It's cool. But that's sort of where the divide comes from. And I think
but the fact that Star Wars people don't call themselves anything, I mean, that's
because a Star Wars fan is a citizen of the United States.
Yeah.
Like there's nobody who's like, oh, Star Wars, what's all that about? I'm not into that whole thing. Whereas I think you do get that with Star Trek in a different sort of a way.
Does that just speak to the purported universality of the Star Wars narrative? Like, is it just?
I wouldn't put it to you that way, because I don't like using the word universality. But you look at the first iteration of Star Trek, the TV show, the original series, Wagon Train to the Stars, as it was called by Gene Roddenberry. Which was successful. It lasted 3 seasons, although it had to be brought back by one of the first fan campaigns for the 3rd season.
Wow! I did not know the story.
Yeah, one of the earliest fan campaigns, like letter writing campaigns, was for the original Star Trek. And so it was a very vocal group of people who sort of said, hey, this thing matters. This is showing things like diversity, equality, like the fact that it's got a mixed race and mixed gendered crew, and nobody seems to care. Like, that's really awesome.
Yeah.
And so they really pushed, and people think the 3rd season's not as good as the first 2, but that's whatever. And so it came back, and it was huge, and it was never huge. It was big, and it had a cult following, but not a worldwide sort of phenomenon following, which Star Wars did. The original Star Wars was one of the first blockbuster movies.
In that people literally lined up around the block to see
it.
The film.
And they saw it repeatedly, and they paid tons of money to go see it again. And I got to experience that when I was a kid, and they re-released the movies, and I went, and like my whole family get together, and we waited in line, and we went to go see Star Wars, the original like Star Wars, when it was just called Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it had that sort of a different cultural impact from day one. That is hard to fight. I mean, and that's a good thing. Like, everybody likes Star Wars. Like, I mean, I am being hyperbolic a little bit there, but generally people who don't like Star Wars are the people who haven't seen Star Wars. It's a very straightforward story. It's melodramatic. It's got wizards and knights, and they just happen to be in space. And there's a strong hero and sort of a rogue and a princess to save. Like, the original Star Wars is like a study in how to take a traditional tale and tell it to the best of its ability. Like, you want to talk the monomyth all over Star Wars.
Oh yeah, it is. Joseph Campbell. Was Joseph Campbell alive to see it? Would he have?
Maybe. I don't know. Let's find out when Joseph Campbell died.
Okay.
Let's
see if Siri can beat you here. When did Joseph Campbell die?
1987. So he would totally have been around.
Died October 30th, 1987, at age 83.
So he might have seen it.
Yeah, he totally could have seen Star Wars. Oh, by the way, Stephen, we totally forgot to do our epigrams, which we're going to get in trouble if we don't do those right now.
Let's do that. Let's do that.
So I will share mine since I have it pulled up, and I'm assuming you have one on the ready. Sure. I'm going to leave this one anonymous, but I found it on a blog while searching for links to socialism and Star Wars. It's not a blog; it was a message board from 2012. And you will have to bleep this after the fact. Those of you watching live, you're going to hear me say a bad word. Deal with it. Star Wars is completely devoid of politics, since it's an action movie that is supposed to be enjoyed by little kids. The rebels are bourgeois as fuck, though, and when I realized that, I stopped liking Star Wars.
Huh. Okay.
That's my
sorry. I'm pulling up mine now. It is going slowly.
That's okay. But no, I did that because there's really a lack of politics in Star Wars, in a way that there isn't in Star Trek. Star Trek, throughout its various iterations, has tackled a lot of political subjects and ideas from very early on to much later, and sometimes coming at it from different angles and with different sort of messages. But Star Wars isn't about that. It's like good guys, bad guys, good guys beat the bad guys. We're done. Yay!
So I'm looking for this in the Abrams article. I can't find the exact quote, but I also can't find the active video. There we go. But basically, like reading that, there was a point where J.J. Abrams says, I haven't seen every episode of every Star Trek, or every version. I think he said every version of every episode of Star Trek, and I'm like,
something weird like that, yeah.
Like, sort of there are just different episodes. Like, if you want to talk versions, like the only different ones are maybe the Menagerie and whatever, like the premiere, the pilots, they're like kind of different versions of that, but it just that one to me sort of spoke to this whole idea of like, oh my God, we're putting this guy in charge of this franchise, and how, which we maybe articulated in way more detail than was necessary back when that was first announced, that like he was going to be the guy to do it. So, although
I still feel like I don't know if he's the best guy to do it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that has bared itself out that he was not. It's like, well, told you so. But this was, even still like before Into Darkness came out.
Yeah, I found the code for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, I haven't seen every episode of every version of Star Trek series, but I'm sure there are many more places to go. So he's answering the question of, how does this franchise still go where no man has gone before?
No one has gone before.
Well, the line says,
come on.
Yeah,
I know,
yes,
but like
yes,
interviewer.
And I know.
Yeah.
Well, to be fair, it is an interview in Playboy.
Yeah.
Which I felt a little bad, like linking to. I'm like, okay. There's still some interesting things, and it's long, and that's interesting. And there are apparently people who just read Playboy for the articles.
Oh yeah.
I've heard of them.
I mean, he has some interesting questions and like his background, but J.J. Abrams is a filmmaker. He's not a Trekkie. He's not a Trekker. He's not a fan. He's
not a Star Warser.
He likes making entertaining movies.
And he's pretty good at
it. Yeah. But there's something about like, I don't think Gene Roddenberry was a filmmaker, if you know what I mean.
No, I would agree. I think Gene Roddenberry would be what I would call a visionary.
Mm-hmm.
With
I don't think J.J. Abrams
implies.
So that's the thing, is sort of like we've reached this point of we're putting filmmakers in charge of these big, culturally impactful films, franchises at least, because we want them to be commercially successful, right? And that's like the primary consideration, is that they are commercially successful, entertaining films with just enough of of things that are particular to that things that are particular to the story, that rather than just particular to film and entertainment in general, to
Mm-hmm.
make them, not appear to be schlocky, money grabs. But that balance point, it's tip. I'm a little bit more. I don't know. I mean, and just to go for me personally, like I see it as like a co-opting of a set of symbols and characters
Sure.
in for a very different purpose than
Yes.
they were originally intended.
I would definitely agree with that, and I think there's a lot of evidence of that in the two Star Wars or Star Trek movies that we've gotten from J.J. Abrams, which is not the only example of this happening. There are plenty of those. Just look at all of the movies made off of 1960s to 80s sitcoms in the last 10 years.
Oh yeah.
From Starsky and Hutch to Bewitched to so many more.
Well, in a weird way, I would also level that charge against George Lucas himself for the prequels. I think he did the same thing to himself, basically. Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely think there's some truth to that. Sort of that the money first. Now, George Lucas, of course, was a brilliant man because he kept the merchandising rights to his movies, and that alone was very smart and businesslike. Whereas the Roddenberrys have literally no control over Star Trek anymore. Although I guess Lucas doesn't anymore because he sold all of it to Disney.
Did he?
Yeah.
Oh, really?
That's like what happened right before the new movies got announced. George Lucas sold Star Wars to Disney.
Yeah.
And Lucas, in what I must deem an act of gratitude, charity, like gave it all to educational causes, which is great.
Wow, like the entirety of the sale price of the Star Wars.
Apparently, yeah, he gave lots and lots of money to people who needed it for educational purposes, which is great. But like immediately afterwards, Disney was like, "New Star Wars trilogy." Yep.
Because why not? Yeah.
Because it's been 15 years since Shadow.
No, it hasn't been 15 years. It maybe will have been 15 years, but it has been since 2003.
Is that when Phantom Menace came out?
Phantom Menace?
I was thinking 15 years since the start of the last trilogy.
Yes, 99, 98. Yeah. 99. Yeah. Well, so what do you hope to see? I mean, there's talk of like, okay, are they going to use the extended universe? Probably not. There's people.
Well, they've said they're not going to.
So there are are we going to have like a split canon with the movies versus the okay? So basically, Abrams is going to do the same thing to Star Wars that happened to Star Trek.
Yes. Let me see if I can find. I apologize for the typing.
Yeah, no worries. Because that was, I mean, and we debated that a lot of like, okay, this new Star Trek movie is very explicitly going, we're basically on a different timeline now, and this is a parallel universe, which is a very Star Trek-y thing to do, and we're just, these movies that are purporting to be Star Trek are exploring that other vein, and they in no way impact this other timeline. They can totally coexist.
Yeah, there's definitely some of that going on. Although it's the way it's sort of presented. I'm trying to find the press release.
But that precedent does not really exist in the Star Wars universe. There's not that idea of like a parallel universes.
I
mean, I'm cool with it, I guess, but. The Star Wars canon has always been much more like the extended universe has been canon. Like
yes,
the books are canon.
There's a lot of canon out there. Now Star Wars has had, and I think it's really interesting, sort of levels of canon. In the sense that movies are primary canon. Everything in the movies is always 100% accurate. Then there's like books, also like Clone Wars, like the TV series. That is also canon, and so anything in the books has always been sort of canon unless contradicted by something in the movies or the TV series at a later point in time.
So,
Um,
but was there anything that Clone Wars really contradicted in the extended universe?
Not that I know of.
Yeah.
Not that I know of. Again, not being the kind of fan who reads Star Wars expanded universe novels or has even watched the Clone Wars.
Mm.
Um, so.
Well, I mean, and we can. I believe you. I guess I've seen that other places that Disney is not going to.
Yeah, but they're basically throwing out all of the established EU canon,
Mm-hmm.
and not in the same way that the new Star Trek movie did, where it was sort of like all of that happened in a different timeline, different universe now. That's how you get old Spock.
Mm-hmm.
But spoiler, old Spock.
Actually, I'm pretty sure it's okay to spoil the new Star Trek movie.
Okay.
Yeah, for our audience, that's all
But
right.
like nothing from the expanded universe is considered canon at all, according to sort of the new stuff.
So no General or no Grand Admiral Thrawn, no
Nothing.
Jedi Academy.
We're back to the movies, which is interesting because many consider the Timothy Vaughn or Zahn Star Wars trilogy. He wrote a trilogy of books that have been sort of considered the next trilogy.
Well, it's like Truce at Baccarat is the first one, right? That was one of the first.
Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command.
Oh, okay, never mind.
It's called the Thrawn trilogy or the Heir to the Empire trilogy.
So that's where you get Grand Admiral Thrawn and like the whole splinter Empire group and
yeah. Hand of Thrawn was another series that came out afterwards, but they were considered for a very long time sort of like the next trilogy, and a lot of people kind of expected that to influence the new movies.
Well, remind me a bit. So Thrawn as a character, it was a different race, right? Like he was a different, or he wasn't human, right?
Yeah, I only know a little bit of.
He had like I don't know. I read like a summary one time from because I know he's a character in Shadows of the Empire.
Yeah.
Shadows of the Empire pulls a little bit from that trilogy. But I mean, I always thought like, man, he sounds like a badass. Like he sounds like so much better of a villain than anything in the actual Star Wars movies. But yeah.
There's a lot of kind of gnashing of teeth amongst the what one might call the true fans, that so much of that is getting thrown out.
Because we don't have a name for them.
I know, but I think there's power and then there's not in the lack of a name, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, what are they? The extendees? Like, what are we gonna?
True fans. I mean, it's one of those really weird things because there is so much popularity of Star Wars, and I think it's interesting because I'm thinking about this. I was trying to think of another fandom that I feel falls into the same sort of, everybody's a fan sort of category, and I came up with Harry Potter. Harry Potter doesn't really have, like, it has a fandom, like it has a super intense fandom, as does Star Wars. There are some super intense Star Wars nerds out there. I know some of both. But there's not like a categorization for people who are fans of either of those works. Like Wizards is like I think the closest you can get with Harry Potter.
But there can also be Muggles, like yeah.
Yeah, and there's but Muggles are people who are not fans of Harry Potter.
Are they? Oh, okay. So there you go. Like
yeah. So the fandom of Harry Potter is so expansive that they decided to name the other as opposed to themselves. It's just assumed you're in the fandom unless you happen to be a Muggle.
That works. It's association by using the exclusion set or whatever.
But that's because there's way more of those. Star Trek has been a very niche thing, and always probably will be. Like there's definitely the people there who are there. Same thing with like Mystery Science Theater 3000. There are people who don't get it, and that's okay. It's not for them.
Mm-hmm.
and riff tracks and Cinematic Titanic and all those other things along with it.
Yeah, but they don't really. There's not a name for those fandoms either. Like the followers of
Misties.
the Misties.
Misties.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, they got a name. Sorry.
Okay, never mind.
Misties. And it's funny because they're still called Misties even after like you're into riff tracks and Cinematic Titanic. They're still Misties.
Mm-hmm. Well, so regardless, like, okay, so Disney's new canon, whatever.
Yes.
It's going to make a lot of people angry. Like, you'll split the experiences or whatever, and so then we'll start having, the Disney timeline or whatever. We're going to get the Abrams timeline. I was always so I've taken a dive into Wikipedia.
Sure.
Wikipedia.
It's such a scary website.
Yep. A few times.
With a clever name.
Very much so. Which does a great job of combining all of the histories from all of the canon, so that you can into I read the timeline of the Star Wars universe alone is incredibly interesting and detailed, and is a great articulation of how like a galactic colonization and interspeciation and interstellar travel can evolve over tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years. Yeah. And that is one of the things that really I think appeals about the Star Wars universe is this. It was my first sort of encounter with the idea of atemporality, of sort of in the past things were better. It's like wait, what? The pinnacle of technological design could lie 2,000 years in the past, and like certain parts of the galaxy could have access to these things and the others, and it's like this is a way better articulation of how things actually work in the world, or would work maybe. It's like once you start working on galactic time and space scales, you get that possibility for truly separate worlds that can occasionally communicate with each other. But it was a way of like kind of recreating the state of the world pre-globalization, right?
Sure.
It harkened back to that time when like the separation between continents meant that an entire civilization could evolve without the precedent of another. That they wouldn't even be aware of another way of doing something, or a crucial piece of technology that could completely change their lives. That was very, very appealing. So I mean, and granted, like I'm sure J.J. Abrams is not going to say anything about the Rakut or the Rakatan or however you say it.
I don't know.
The ancients, and he's not gonna. I would hope he doesn't bring anything as like universe changing as the Scourge or whatever, the Scar. What are they that
Again,
come in?
You're apparently more knowledgeable on this than I am. You're testing my limits, and I've failed.
Like there's sort of he can only rewrite so much in 3 movies.
Yes.
And the entirety of the expanded universe is still going to be able to touch timescales and concepts that he will never be able to in 100 movies. So it's this little bomb of different canon is not going to make that much of an impact.
It's not going to make those other works disappear.
Right, or invalidate at all everything that has grown up around them in the minds of the fans. So. But I
think it's a very positive way of looking at it. So yay.
Yay. Well, it's what the new Star Wars movie's out in 2017?
End of this year, I think.
End of this year?
Supposed to be happening.
No, it's got to be.
Let's ask the internet. You ask Siri, I'll ask Google.
Because they just announced the cast, and they're like doing read-throughs, and I'm sure it's still in pre-production, so I'm sure it's next year.
I feel like I read somewhere that said December.
There is no way it is out this December.
Summer 2015.
Okay, yeah, and it'll probably slip to winter 2015, I would imagine.
I don't know. I mean, Star Wars is a summer movie.
Okay, yeah, and I mean it's Disney, so they'll make sure that it hits that deadline.
Yeah. Is it a little bit weird that Disney's going to be owning like so many of the major tentpole films, all the Marvel stuff and all the Star Wars stuff?
Well, I'm kind of okay with it because it allows it allows things like you know, true mashup stuff to exist. You know, where you can just like I loved the Lego Movie and like all the things they were able to get rights to. I know that's not Disney, but it's like it's another example of like if you can get rights to like all these superheroes, you know, all this, you know, DC universe, and also all of the Lego stuff. Like you have this incredible tool set to pull from.
Now it's also worth pointing out that they did that way back when with Roger Rabbit and managed to pull it off successfully.
Sure, and
without that crossover.
Games like it allows works like Kingdom Hearts to exist, whereas you know, some guy can come in and just be like, I can use anything in the Disney set, you know, and the Disney set just keeps getting bigger. And so, like, imagine mashups between, like, you know, Mickey Mouse with a lightsaber, you know, like that kind of stuff is going to happen. And maybe
now it's canon.
And now yeah, I don't know if that.
Jedi.
Right, but like, so Disney owns a good chunk of the Marvel stuff too.
All of it. Disney owns Marvel.
So you could potentially have a.
You could have Mickey Mouse dressed up as Wolverine holding a lightsaber, and it's official, and it's canon.
Yeah.
And you have to deal with it.
So you seem a little bit bitter about this.
Well, it's not so much. It's a little bit that. It's a little bit that. You know, it's sort of this. Disney has done a lot of things with copyright that are a problem. And them owning more and more copyrights does not make me happier.
Yeah, because it does bring a lot more things under their umbrella that will never be accessible to anybody else.
Yes, and so Mickey Mouse with the lightsaber existed before Disney bought Star Wars. Like someone came up with that and drew it and put it on a DeviantArt page. But now they're going to get in trouble for it, even more so than they would have before, potentially. So it and not necessarily that person on DeviantArt is going to get in trouble for it, because that's going to be overlooked. But there's this sort of monopolization of media where these big tentpole things are owned by bigger and bigger companies, and there's less focus, perhaps, on some of the smaller, more independent, interesting things. The weirdos, the crazy ones. Because the thing is, no matter what these new Star Wars movies will be, they will be safe.
Oh yeah, they're not gonna maybe that's why like something like a Grand Admiral Thrawn wouldn't be in them. Like he's a pretty dramatic, interesting character, and that just wouldn't do for a broad audience. You know,
it's difficult to handle that. No, they want to be tough. We want easy and accessible because we don't want it to fail. They can't let it fail, and it won't. But. You know, where's the weirdos and the crazy ones?
In that way, it makes me like more like grateful, I guess, is because maybe the evolution won't happen in the Star Wars vector, but it means that it encourages filmmakers and creators who do want to disrupt, maybe not to do it with so much with the existing syntax. You know, they will be sort of encouraged to do the film equivalent of neologisms, you know, things like things like Christopher Nolan doing, you know, Inception, like doing original IP, like creating Spike Jonze doing brilliant works like Her, you know, Wes Anderson doing his thing, because you know Wes Anderson's like, I can pull from all of history. Like you know, your limited character set does not interest me. You know, like that sort of.
Minor digression. Did you see the VFX reel for Grand Budapest Hotel?
No, I did not.
Watch it. I found it impressive. As someone who doesn't really like Wes Anderson movies, I found it very impressive. Because there's a ton of VFX in that movie, and you didn't know it.
Okay, all right.
I mean, I'll promise you that.
If you can find the link to that, we will include that in the show notes.
I totally can. But
I mean, you know, continuing on that thread, I guess, like, you know, Disney Disney can pull more and more and more and more and more and more things. Disney can to borrow a phrase. Sorry, Disney. I'm going to paraphrase it maybe so that you don't sue me. The tighter you clasp your fist, Lord Vader, the the more creative works will slip through your fingers. I don't know, like that idea of just the more you try to control the thing, the more it will get out there and get away from you. And I mean, so far Disney has done a pretty good job of cracking down on any illegal uses of their stuff. But it's like once you look at Nintendo, for instance, I think Nintendo is like Disney in the future. You get the cannibalization becomes. The cannibalization just gets ridiculous after a certain point, and I think maybe Nintendo is a good example of like when you don't have enough IP diversity, it's almost like incestuous, your genetic pool is not diverse enough. So maybe Disney is trying to avoid that by like co-opting enough that you will have enough genetic diversity in the creative recombinations. But I still don't think that the creative works alone and the characters and the symbols that they've accumulated are enough to continue to adapt it quickly enough to all the new things that could possibly occur in our society.
And I think you're right with it. I just wish that they spent maybe a single % of what they spent on Star Wars towards something new we've never seen before.
Well, they do. So they own studios. I'm struggling to think of examples, but I know they have significant stakes in other film studios that are doing original works. But that's like their R&D. That's like if something is successful there, they're going to pull it into the mothership at some point. That's
true.
But like I guess to continue the thought,
just go look at list of assets owned by Disney.
Oh, is this also something you put in the chat?
I have now.
Okay.
So Walt Disney Studios, Lucasfilm, Disney Music, Disney Theatrical, Disney Studio, Disneyland Parks, Disneyland Media, ABC, A&E, ABC Family, ABC-owned television stations group, which has a bunch of local networks, Disney Channels, ESPN.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That, Marvel Entertainment, all of that.
Oh, man.
Like, there's a lot of stuff going on there. They used to own Power Rangers, but they finally sold it.
So yeah, Lucasfilm and maybe I want to say there was something else, some other movie studio that they own, but I don't know.
They own a lot, I'm sure, but
yeah. So, but I guess I've thought of a better analogy, I guess, or metaphor afterwards. It's like, so the whole rise of superhero comics, from what I understand, and maybe you've articulated this before, was like out of a realization that there were kinds of stories that needed telling, or that could only that maybe required or that necessitated the creation of new kinds of characters, new kinds of scenarios, and the comic book as it evolved, that the superhero comic was a way of doing that. And I mean, it was a truly there wasn't really like you weren't just rehashing Greek mythology necessarily. Like, in a way, these are kind of gods, but they're not. And that idea of the fatal flaws to them and all that. Like, it was creating a new sort of character type. And maybe we still need to do that at some point, and Disney won't be able to just mash up a few of their existing characters into that kind of thing that will be relevant in some of the works that Cory Doctorow is doing with his, for instance. But I don't know. Maybe you have a better example to give there.
I think yes. I think we will get new interesting things still. This is not at all where I expected this conversation to end up. which is fun. That's why I like doing bad philosophy.
Although
so,
it's
yeah.
still germane, I think.
No,
We're still on
definitely.
the thread, yeah.
We're on topic, which is not always the case.
Yeah.
No, I feel like there's sort of a democratization of film that's happened over, I would say, the last 20 to 30 years that exists, but it's also sort of equivalent to the democratization of the web, which is ending thanks to net neutrality.
Yeah. We don't have that for much longer.
No. But part of that comes with, like, anybody can make a movie. That exists. We've reached that threshold. I made a movie once where I sat in a chair for 24 hours. It was not any good, but I made it because I could. And I still have all the footage someday, and actually one day I'll edit it into something resembling a film. But there's a difference between everybody being able to make something and everybody being able to get something seen. And I think that's where I want to see stuff change and stuff happen. And for a long time, I was really hoping it was the web. We'll see how that works out. Have you heard of VHX? That's something I discovered relatively recently.
Friends that I met here in town created a film called Bet Ray's Fold. That was they made a documentary about the poker scene and like the rise of online poker and the bust and all that, and they distributed that through VHX.
Yeah,
things like Patreon, like going direct to an audience. At the same time, I say the word Patreon in a general crowd, and 9 people out of 10 are like, what?
What?
Yeah. But you tell them, like, oh, I saw it on ABC, and they're like, oh, yeah.
Yeah, well, and the thing is, they probably did too.
Thursday nights.
They, I don't know what Marvel's Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. has been getting in ratings, but more people have seen that than will ever see Bill the Galactic Hero, which is a movie that got kickstarted about 1.5 years ago. That's based on a very classic sci-fi novel directed by Alex Cox, who is like the director of, among other things, Repo Man, like some great work. But he shot it on the University of Colorado with students of University of Colorado in black and white on film because he can.
Well, and I mean, obscure stuff like that. It's this is a reference to a discussion, the physics opera.
Yeah.
So the sort of, Kevin and I saw this theatrical production a few weeks ago. It is so obscure in its topic and in its content and in its references that very, 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 very few people in the world will even begin to understand what the artist is doing with the work. And that that's like maybe the extreme over here. If Star Wars is on the opposite end, right? Like you create a thing that is so particular, so niche that no one will get it. So is there like a Goldilocks zone for content that isn't Disney, that isn't generic, that isn't watered down, but is also rich and relevant enough? And
I think there was at one point.
Is trying to find a lot of, like you and I think a lot of our aesthetic is trying to find that golden range for what we consume.
I think yes is the short answer. There is one, but I think it has dropped over time, mainly because of like the Disneyfication.
What has dropped? Like the amount of those things in the Goldilocks zone that more people find,
that are being created or that are being discovered. Like you're getting your niche and you're getting your big blockbusters, but I think there's less happening in that middle realm.
If we're so it's that whole long tail analogy. Like the graph has gone from this. Or by the analogy earlier, it's gone from this to this, and this goes like to infinity, and this goes to like infinity this way. Yeah. So you have like you have a cliff face instead of a mountain. Yeah.
No, I think, and that's the tricky thing is it's the long tail, I think, is a lot smaller than people think it is.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, in a weird way, I'm sorry, but like, and I'm only associating this because of the shape of the graph, but in a weird way, it mirrors the income disparity that we're also starting to see again.
A very apropos discussion, considering you posted that in the notes. But yes,
I didn't really intend to segue back to that.
But it does kind of mirror that,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah, like people sort of we'll bring up the niche as a counterexample, and everyone always brings up themselves as an anecdote when they talk about income disparity. It's like, well, I'm doing fine, and I have just why aren't you giving a percentage of your income? Why are you requiring the rich to? And it's just like it's sort of you think you're comparing.
I don't think you understand how rich some people are.
Exactly. I think that's the thing. It's like we look at Disney and it's like I don't think I really even appreciate like one Disney is like 10 billion guilds, or something like that.
I can't comprehend what what those people have in terms of assets and flexibility, and they live in a different world than I do.
Well, you kind of hit it on it with and I mean, we're not basing these on actual market numbers, but just sort of trying to come to grips with the difference that the entire market for YouTube is like the equivalent of like Thursday night broadcast on television or something, or it's like one game of NFL football, So like the difference in these market sizes is tremendous.
You look at like what is your total, if you don't mind my asking, like total lifetime views for your videos on YouTube?
Almost 7 million.
Almost 7 million. Over 10 years.
Yeah, no, over like 5. I mean, I had almost none pre-2009. So
okay, so you blew up. Okay, so if I have 7 million over 5 years, that would have gotten anything canceled on network television, except Community.
Yeah. Well, and like you mentioned Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., it's like, the audience of one episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is more than exactly that, more than 1,000 YouTube creators in their lifetime. That's the difference in these media, and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. isn't even that great or successful of a show. Like Game of Thrones, like the utter crushing ubiquity of Game of Thrones in the zeitgeist right now is remarkable. And like for HBO to not have spent a significant portion of their budget upgrading their servers before the premiere of the season 4, where they were crashing, it's like, I'm sorry, HBO, do you have any idea what sort of power you are working with here, like what you have on your hands? Like, this is not just an internet thing. This is a huge thing that deserves a crap ton of money, and yet HBO is thinking in terms of like television. Like, well, but our broadcast is doing fine. It's like, no. Like, this is but that maybe is not a great example because it transcends the two markets. But like the ability for like what is the middle ground content? We have red versus blue, but that we don't have. What was middle ground content before, Kevin? What is the Goldilocks stuff that we're missing?
It's hard to say. Things that come to mind are in the TV realm. Cheers is always kind of a classic example. Cheers.
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld.
Seinfeld wasn't huge.
Seinfeld was huge. Cheers, though, grew over time. It's one of the really few shows that did, where it got bigger for a very long time. Most shows start big and will maintain or drop over time. Cheers grew immensely in its second season, and probably should have gotten canceled based on the numbers of its first season. But then there's also so many, like, you don't see movies made for $60 million or $40 million anymore.
Oh yeah. You either see it made for 60,000,
yes,
or like 300 million. Yeah.
Like, that sort of thing. Veronica Mars was made with what, $3 million, which is considered super low budget. But you're not seeing, like, with maybe the exception of Woody Allen, because he apparently still makes movies, those sort of middle of the range movies. You do still get middle of the range TV, I feel. Pick anything on NBC on a given night. Um, but those middle of the range movies, you definitely they maybe still exist, but they don't have a chance to become a runaway success or to grow. They're
Well,
kind of factoried out.
I want to step back a little bit from this thread because I think we're having trouble getting examples here. But like, what are we sort of talking about? I think we're talking in terms of control mechanisms again, right? Like the over, and I think in the economic example and in the film example, like the top 1%, right, in terms of media creation and in terms of economics, are able to create like the overtones for society, right? Like the movies that come out are controlling, you know, what's in the public vernacular, right? Like if you're not watching Game of Thrones, you're like excluded somehow, right? If you're not seeing the Marvel movies, if you're not catching the new Star Wars, if you're not catching the new Star Trek, like you're out of it somehow. You're out of the norm. At the same time, you know, the top 1% of income controllers are controlling like global trade and where, you know, how policy is made in countries throughout the world, right? So you have a media plutocracy and an economic plutocracy that maybe actually are more interrelated than we would like to admit, but like
I wouldn't expect those to be unrelated.
No, for sure. But let's, you know, assume that these are analogous cases. And I mean, you know, correlation doesn't imply causation and all of that, but it's an interesting correlation, is it not?
It is.
That sort of that idea of like, okay, if the people that are controlling the overtones are not creating terribly creative overtones, or not at least allowing the space for their own disruption, that's somehow bad, right? And this gets back to what Unger's thinks. It's just like the system is not allowing itself to be criticized. And you know, if Disney just keeps retreading, if Nintendo keeps retreading, if they just keep recycling the same things again and again and again and again and again, it is that idea of you get maybe it is the genetic analogy is the best one, where you get mutations because of, you know, a lack of genetic diversity.
Yeah.
Like there's something inherent to life that needs extinction events.
I saw something
every
about
now and
this,
again.
interestingly, in I don't know if you read 538 at all.
No.
They've expanded recently. They used to be like a very strictly political blog, but they kind of do statistics on everything now. This is 538 is the same guy who predicted the Obama win by like 90%.
Yeah, Nate Silver. He wrote
Nate Silver, yeah.
The Signal and Noise, which I need to reread. It's a great book.
But, so it's his blog, but he's also got like a team now. But there was a really interesting article about the fact that racehorses have stopped getting faster. For like 50 years, racehorses have stopped getting faster. And one of the things he kind of points to in this article is that all racehorses are thoroughbreds, and like 80% of them can track their genes back to a single horse. And so because of that, you're sort of dealing with this like very limited gene pool. So there is very little chance for mutation or chance for new things to happen. And so we've sort of hit this peak time for how fast a horse can run in these circumstances. That maybe wouldn't happen if there were more interbreeding and more opportunities for weird things to happen. But because only thoroughbreds are raced, because they're like, that's the big thing, is they're thoroughbreds. They have these impeccable histories and, you know, patronages and all that sort of stuff going back into time. So I wonder if we're not hitting something like that where all the movies kind of feel the same.
Yeah, all our media franchises are thoroughbred.
Yeah.
I like that analogy. That's a good one. I think so what's the solution then, right? Like, once you this happened with the monarchy, right? Like they would bring bastard children into life, right? Like you would go, or you would have to marry like, you know, a very different thing. It would be like Disney would have to bring in something very strange to itself, right? Like, or it would need a major component replaced by something very, very like. So Epic Mickey, I was very, very excited about in some of the initial concept art that was done for it, because it looked to be a like disruptive reimagining of sort of the dark realm of fantasy, in the way that Fantasia explored, some of like the darker kind of psychedelic, consequences of just, letting your imagination run wild. Epic Mickey was a way of like, sort of going at those very dark concepts and bringing those into, letting the characters sort of grapple with these, almost like a growing up process. And Pirates of the Caribbean could have done a little bit of that, but again, it's sort of it was marginalized. It was brought back. It was made safer before release, and was all the interesting components were sort of distilled out of it, and that or filtered out. So yeah, I'm wondering what is the equivalent in media?
I don't know.
How do you add diversity to the
Stop going to Transformers movies. I think that's the key.
Yeah, but if these things are so refined, like if pop songs, for instance, are so refined that they are tapping into something biological, right? Like something we can't control. We're just compelled to go to a Transformers movie because it
I am not compelled to go to a Transformers movie.
Well, maybe Transformers is a little bit of a failure, but in a lot of ways, the new Star Trek movie, it's not Michael Bay, but like that, same sort of elements of just like lots of explosions and blah, 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 just sort of confuse you into thinking like so spectacular, like.
Well, it is spectacular. It is full of spectacle.
Yeah.
Very little else.
Just like gravity, this is what we're talking about with Gravity. It's like yes, this is visually crazy interesting, but that's like distracting from the fact that it's kind of a mediocre film, Yes. So I don't know. Like
the book adaptation of Gravity, it wouldn't be very good.
Mm-mm.
Did someone written that? I'm curious. Gravity novelization. I'm just curious if anybody's written the novelization of Gravity.
Oh, I'm sure that's been done. I'm sorry. So this is going to sound going to look very boring on the video, but I'm now going to move back into our studio space now that our boss just left.
Getting close.
Getting close. Well, I guess. So Kevin, did you find the novelization of Gravity?
It doesn't look like it exists, which I'm okay with. I'm okay with that not existing.
Is Kitty doing things?
Yes. Come back inside. Yeah, there's a painting behind you.
That is a painting behind me. That is Judge Roy Bean. I'll move aside here. That is him right there. This is Judge Roy Bean and the horse thief. He is passing judgment because
he's still a horse.
The law west of the Pecos.
Ah.
He took it upon himself to be the sovereign, as it were.
Okay. I may have to go grab a cat. I'll be right back.
Okay.
You got it? Okay. Yeah. This is like one of those movies where there's funny things happening in the background the whole time, and we just ignore them.
Well, what's a fun thing to think about here, Kevin, is like what has Disney? I'm sure Disney has realized this too, that's like part of this is a threat to them, and that I'm sure they brought in the most expensive consultants money can buy in the realms of biology and engineering and systems theory and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to ensure their...
What else would they bring in?
Right, well, to ensure their own long-term survival, because this really, in many ways, it might behoove them to look in places other than where you would imagine, for ideas on how to survive. And they have they certainly have the funds to do so. So I guess I'm wondering what my fear is here, but it's like, yeah, even the more successful they are, the more possible it is for them to maintain their success.
Mm-hmm. And I think they will. I don't think Disney's going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Barring like.
Are we going to have them 100 years from now? It's just going to be really weird.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Mm.
With the power they have. I mean, barring like massive earth-shattering changes in the world, which could totally happen in 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't surprise me if they were still around in 2114.
And we'll be on like Star Wars 21 by that time. There'll be
100 years, a new trilogy every 15. There'll be a lot of Star Wars by then.
Yeah. There's got to be something different. I think there already is. There already is. We're not. But what worries me I'm sorry, this is my last point.
Okay.
We'll wrap up the episode. What worries me is the thing that you kind of hinted at about the internet. It's like we sort of glimpsed that this could have been it, right? Like this could have been the thing.
Yep.
And the old world killed Aaron Schwartz.
Yep. And net neutrality along with him.
Mm-hmm. And that like we with all our distributed media and all our long tails and all of our Apache and open source weren't able to. Yeah, we just didn't have the money, power, gall.
Money and power, I think those are the same thing in this case.
Mm-hmm. To overcome, and yeah, I'm still coming to grips with that.
It'll have a long tail. It'll have a lot of effects, far-reaching.
So maybe like 50 years from now, we'll see the dream of the internet actually come about. It'll take like another generation growing up within it to take it as far as.
Unless they grow up within it as it's going to be and don't see a need for change.
Yeah, I don't see the potential for it to be other than what it was.
Because how we interact changes how we think. Which one of the things I put in the chat there is a link to a short novella I've been reading about that very thing. So check it out.
That is it the kind of the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis?
I don't know what that is, but probably.
Like the language that we use articulates the thoughts and concepts we're able to have.
I would say the language that we use shapes the thoughts that we have.
Yeah, I think that's a better way of putting it. Yeah, but
that's very much in the novella or novelette. I don't know what we call it.
Yeah.
It's called The Truth of Fact and the Truth of Feeling. It is up for a Hugo this year, and I am actually voting in the Hugos, so I have been making my way through all of those.
Oh. All right. Well, we'll check it out. We'll put it in the show notes and take from there. Well, we started on Star Wars and got back to the kind of depressing topic of the plutocracy again, which I think we're both satisfied by that. I guess.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. It's where we ended up.
Yeah. It was good though. Like we've got a good trilogy going here. I don't know how we're going to conclude it before the next rule change, but
yeah. I'll figure that out when we get there.
I know one thing that will be different after or with the next episode. I'll have
been to Poland.
Yeah, I'll have been to Poland. I'm flying to Poland for a sign language concert, and right after this, I'm going to be rehearsing a bit more for that and recording a video.
You want to give a hint as to any new songs you might be performing to those of us who are big fans of Bad Philosophy and Stephen doing ASL?
Yeah, I will be glossing and recording, I'll be performing 5 new songs. 2 of them are relatively particular to this audience. One by a Polish group, one Wind of Change by Scorpions, which is like an early '90s rock song, kind of about the fall of the Berlin Wall, and a few other new ones.
Okay.
Some Andrew Bird.
Is there going to be a recording of it? Do you know that'll end up on the YouTubers?
I am 90% sure it will be video recorded.
Cool.
I don't know what the quality will be or anything like that, but yeah, it'll probably.
Look at the history of dance. That thing's got terrible quality. Everybody watches it.
Yeah, no kidding. So, Kevin, do you have anything to mention coming up in the near future?
No. No. I don't have anything to mention in the near future. Vote for the Hugos. $40 gets you a sustaining membership, which allows you to vote on them this year and participate in the nominations and voting next year.
Okay.
And if you get one this year, you get to own the entirety of the Wheel of Time because it's up for Best Novel.
All right.
So that's a thing that I've got that in my head a lot.
Well, yeah, and of course follow us on the interwebs while they still exist.
In the usual places.
Yes, in the usual places. Badphilosophy.com, Twitter.com/badphilosophy, storrents, @KevSond. Kevin, thanks for joining me once again.
Always happy.
Yay. And I'm Stephen Torrance. I'll see you next time on Bad Philosophy.
And you'll see us, because it's a video. Woo!
Yeah, that's right. We will see you next time on Bad Philosophy.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye!